The incessant drip, drip, drip of a distant tap can be infuriating, but close up and in slow motion, it has a beauty all its own. Tap water is so purified as to be virtually sterile, but the drops that make up this village duck pond, collected and distributed by an enthusiastic dog, are a different matter altogether. Even though tap water has been used by as many as 10 other people before it plops into the family sink, it's been cleansed of all its living inhabitants. Not so these droplets. Each contains a tiny nature reserve of miniature living creatures, visible only by the highly specialized photography developed by Peter Parkes at Oxford Scientific Films in the early 1970s. The camera bench is designed to film minute objects against a dark background, while keeping the image perfectly steady. A drop of pond water in front of the camera swirls and pulsates with life forms that are invisible as individuals to the naked eye. This, highly magnified, is what gives the green colour to country ponds in summer. It's not just slime, but a complex plant called volvox. Each spinning green golf ball is a cluster of single-celled plants drifting through the water, each just half the size of a full stop in a newspaper. They were once thought to be individuals rather than groups, and what makes them join together is still uncertain. In sunny weather, the spherical clusters develop daughter colonies inside themselves, and the daughters sometimes produce their own granddaughter colonies, like a microscopic set of Russian dolls. Here, the granddaughters are just visible inside. In due course, the parent colonies release their offspring into the water. Once all the daughters have left, the empty shell of the parent colony dies and breaks up to provide nourishment for the growing new colonies. Not all the green haze in pond water is volvox. Some of it is euglena. Euglena is a plant, but it's highly variable in shape and able to swim around in the water, which makes it seem in some ways more like an animal. For a long time, scientists couldn't make up their minds what it was. What they did know from the first was that it multiplies at an extraordinary rate. In a village pond at the height of summer, the green tinge to the water is probably a mixture of volvox and euglena. On the waterweed are plant-like growths that are in fact animals. Vorticella attaches itself to plant stems by a slender stalk in clusters of individuals. In the breeding season, the males break free to move among the females. Vorticella feeds by filtering the water. The stalk that holds each individual in place functions like a microscopic spring. Vorticella feeds by sucking in even smaller animals and plants which abound in the pond water. 40 paramecium swimming side by side could pass through the eye of this needle. It too is an animal, the scavenger of this tiny community. Here, it's cleaning up the remains of dead yeast cells that have been dyed red. The yeast is quickly engulfed and digested by a single-celled animal less than 1/100th of a millimetre wide. It has no proper stomach, but an area of the cell where digestion takes place. As the yeast is digested, the artificial red colour disappears from the cells. Within a few minutes, it's all gone. Paramecium is a highly beneficial animal to humans. It mops up millions of bacteria a day from heavily polluted waters, like a microscopic waste disposal unit. To keep it healthy, water needs regular cleaning. There's little or no industrial pollution in a village pond, but the natural seasonal rubbish has to be cleared up. The agent for this is a trumpet-shaped colonial animal called stentor. The fringe of hairs at the front seem to be rotating, but they're beating the water to filter food from it. Stentor can release its grip and swim freely, meeting its fellows in the open water and fanning their outer surfaces with its beating hairs. At mating time, male and female join together, moving within the group in a graceful pas de deux, looking like two ghosts in love. Daphnia are the aquarist's friend. Practically everything eats them. They're water fleas, 1.5 millimeters long. This one is laden with eggs. Daphnia protects its young in a brood pouch, where they grow for several days. Launching them into their new life can be difficult. Usually, it's a simpler process. Many, if not most, of the offspring die before they're mature. They're such popular prey of fish and insects, and even smaller animals. Attached to this stem are delicate tree-like growths, each a predatory animal called hydra, waiting for food to arrive. The tentacles are armed with stinging cells, like those of a jellyfish, which is a close relation. Hydra is one of the few members of the group that has adapted to life in fresh water. When the nutritious parts have been digested, Hydra ejects the empty Daphnia skin. Winter is a difficult time for Daphnia. With no food about, any offspring born would starve. So it adopts a different strategy, starting by shedding its own skin. Attached to the skin is a cluster of winter eggs, which will drift away with the discarded outer covering. The husk and the eggs sink to the bottom, where they will hatch when the weather warms up again. The adult can then produce more eggs. In winter, most of the dramas fall silent in temperate freshwater pools. Now it's time to turn to the sea and a warmer climate. Along the coral shores of Bermuda is a good place to start. The water is warm and clear and full of life. Each droplet contains a microcosm of the whole ocean. The creatures we're going to look at are present in uncountable millions, though they're invisible to the naked eye. What looks like pure, clear seawater is a thriving, seething community of living creatures. A single drop of seawater on a swimmer's face shows how rich is the mini-life of tropical oceans. Most of the animals are planktonic. That is, they drift in the upper layers of the water, and they're microscopic. The best way to collect them is to tow a net behind a boat. The net is made of fine muslin, and it must be towed at the right speed. Too slow and the drifting creatures will escape. Too fast and the water won't flow through the net. Peter Parks became expert at selecting exactly the right speed for collecting the animals for his photographic bench. He carefully washes the catch down the net into the collecting jar at the bottom. The excitement of this kind of fishing is that he never knows quite what he'll find inside. It depends on so many variables, such as the temperature and the state of the tide. After trawling for a kilometre, the catch doesn't look much to the naked eye. It takes sophisticated macro photography to reveal the wonders of this tiny drop of seawater. First to show is the veliger larva of a mollusk. Like stentor, it has thousands of tiny hairs called cilia, filtering the water for food. The cilia don't generate enough power to enable the larva to swim. It just drifts with the currents, moving away, sometimes far away from its sedentary parent, perhaps a limpet crawling on the rocks. In the warm upper layers of the sea, it'll find enough food to enable it eventually to grow to the size where it too will be able to settle down. These tiny animals are crab larvae. At this stage, they're all eyes, compound eyes like in insects. At about 6 weeks, they begin to take on a more recognizable shape. Later, they grow too heavy to drift in the surface waters, unless, like this crab off Bermuda, they find a resting place in the drifting masses of sargassum weed. Spiky and transparent, these microscopic larvae bear only the vaguest resemblance to their parents, though the spines may be something of a clue. They're scaly in enormous close-up, but they still don't reveal what they are. But here's the adult, a sea urchin, another sedentary creature that releases its larvae to the tender mercy of the plankton swarms. Some of the organisms found while strolling on a tropical beach are highly decorative, though too big for a single drop of water. This is a sea bottle, one of the largest single plant cells in existence. It lives in the plankton close to the surface and often gets washed up on tropical beaches between the tides. During the day, the plants absorb sunlight to carry out their photosynthesis. At sunset, a host of other creatures migrate up to feed on them. Some planktonic plants have very unexpected shapes. This one's called a sea anchor, and about 500 would sit comfortably on a pinhead. They're single-celled plants and so numerous that they're sometimes called the grass of the ocean. This is Basilaria paradoxa. It doesn't have a common name because only scientists ever see it. Each needle-shaped individual is joined to others with sliding joints that produce its eerie method of movement. It was discovered only a century ago, and it's still one of the most baffling plants in the world. As its name suggests, it is a paradox. The equivalent of sheep that eat the grass of the ocean are the copepods, the animals that come up to the surface at night to graze. They're minute crustaceans, and they've evolved into a wide range of wonderful forms. Many of them have enormous barbed antennae and spiked tails. The spines may discourage attack from behind, and the antennae help to keep them in position near the surface. Many copepods are filter feeders, collecting minute plants to eat. In a single night, each might filter 50 litres of water. Impressive for a creature only 2 or 3 millimeters long. Shoals of small fish feed on the copepods, which comprise 90% of all sea creatures, so they're in plentiful supply. But the fish don't have it all their own way. They have to leave their eggs drifting in the water, kept afloat by a drop of oil like a tiny pearl. Sometimes a significant proportion of these eggs is eaten by the predatory copepods. When the fish larva develops, it begins to feed, and the copepods are once more near the bottom of the food chain. The food chain is complex in tropical waters. Many copepods feed on their own kind. Most predatory species have well-developed eyes, often with huge convex lenses. This one, Capillia, needs exceptional eyesight to spot its prey, which is transparent. The thick lenses focus light onto the twin retinae, near the central pale-coloured mass. It has sharp claws for seizing its prey. About 6 millimeters across, Obelia, a relative of the jellyfish, is an avid hunter of copepods. It spends part of its life as a mobile predator and the rest sitting on the seabed. It has stinging tentacles to paralyze its prey before seizing it with the trap-like mouth in the middle. When Obelia is hunting, it pulses its way through the plankton swarms, trailing poisonous tentacles like fine threads. When it makes a catch, the action is almost too quick to see. A fiery parasol flying through the darkness of the deep is a tiny jellyfish. It's hard to resist comparisons with outer space and galaxies of remote and brilliant stars, but these are the stuff of Earth. They're radiolarians, one of the oldest of all life forms. Their skeletons sink to the ocean bed when they die, together with the shells of foraminiferans, barely 1/4 of a millimetre long. Over millions of years, the accumulation is vast. When the seabed is heaved up by an earth movement, the rock formed by these creatures comes to the surface as chalk, like the white cliffs of Dover. Most creatures of the water drop leave no such monument. They live and die unseen, each wonderfully adapted to its brief life in the sea. Salps, for example, move around the vast volumes of the ocean like little jet boats. The barrel draws the water in, only to squirt it out backwards to drive the creature along. Their young have a rudimentary backbone. Salps are very quick off the mark, but there's one animal in the plankton that specializes in hunting them. It's a deep water crustacean called Phronima. It forces its way inside a salp and eats it from the inside out. When it's cleaned out the body with its beak-like jaws, Phronima lays its eggs inside. If salps are jets, pteropods fly in a more orthodox way, with wings. In fact, the wings are its foot. Pteropod means winged foot. They're adult sea snails, but unlike most of their kind, they live among the plankton, flying through the surface waters. They're closely related to the heteropods, predatory mollusks whose shell is so small that most of their body is outside it. This one's called Atlanta, one of the largest of the group. Heteropods feed by rasping food off their victims with a proboscis, rather like an elephant's trunk. This glowing light bulb is a coral larva, on its way to colonize some distant shore. Eventually, it'll take its place in a coral reef produced by a mass of living polyps, depositing limestone in a variety of shapes and colors. Coral reefs are a favorite habitat for octopuses, and this is how they start life. It's minute, but it already has tentacles and cells with which it can change color. And it already displays the aggression of the successful hunter it'll become. The salt spray on one's face on a seaside walk, or the gleaming droplets flung from a Labrador's coat, they all contain more than anyone would have thought. Peter Park's remarkable optical bench recorded just some of the mysterious life forms which are contained in a single drop of water.
Five has wildlife every weekday night. Tomorrow it's not just birds that migrate, as the monarch butterfly and other small miracles shows. Don't miss it.